So we're, as always, going to start by opening our basic template. And just a reminder, this is lecture you follow along with and submit. So please follow along. All right, so up to this point, when we have worked with our grid here, if ever we had an object that was larger than our grid, we just drew outside of our grid. So say I do a rectangle here. And so we just went outside of our grid, and that wasn't really a big issue. Light go in here. But we actually can control our grid size. And our grid is really meant to be kind of the size, the maximum size of our document here. And we adjust that by entering limits. So I'm going to type in limits here. Hello. Thank you. Felix. There's a reminder for tomorrow. Yeah. All right. So I've entered in the limits command, so it's just limits, and the first thing it's going to ask me to do is specify our lower left corner. And for this class, we're always going to use the same value for that, 0 and 0, and because of that, it's already listed here in parentheses, which means if I hit enter, it's automatically going to use that. So we'll type in limits, we'll hit enter, and now it's asking us to specify our upper left corner. And it's, sorry, upper right. So currently, it's 10.5 by 8. So if I zoom out here, it's going to be 10.5 at the bottom and then 8 up. So I can either look at this and punch in a predetermined value here. So I could do maybe 17 by 11. Or I can actually just click my upper left-hand corner wherever I want my grid to extend to. So if I click right up here, you can see it's extended my grid that way. So a quick and easy way to change the size of our grid. Now, what if for today's assignment, I have a architectural based assignment, so we'll all review that here. First thing I want to do is change my units. Type units here. And we're going to change this to architectural. And our document is so big that we're just going to set our precision to 0. So it's not going to show fractions of an inch at all. So those are the only two things we need to change to go to our architectural units. And whenever we change our units, we typically also want to change our dim style. So reminder, shortcut for that is just D and enter. And we're going to modify our class style here. So hit class style and modify. And I'm in my primary units tab. And we're going to change this to architectural. And the same precision of 0, 0. So that just means it's not going to show fractions of an inch. It's just going to round to the nearest inch. So I just hit D for dim style. I modified our class style, so make sure you don't click any of these other options here, override or new. We just hit modify. We're at our primary units tab up here, and we change this to architectural and a precision of 0. Do not change anything else at this time. And then just to verify that we've done everything correctly here, I'll just do a quick dimension. And that looks good, 5 inches. Now for today's assignment, we're going to be drawing really large objects. They're going to be in 75 feet. So I'm going to do a new rectangle here. I'm going to put it right next to this rectangle. And I'm going to make this 75 feet. So I'm going to hit 75, and then I got to enter in my little feet symbol, which is just a apostrophe. And I'll tab over, and I'm going to make it 100 feet tall. So again, 100, and I got to make sure that I put in my apostrophe. Otherwise, it'll do 100 inches. So I want to make sure we've got 75 feet by 100 feet. Hit enter. And now I can see my corner of my rectangle here, and I'm going to zoom out here, and I keep zooming, and I can't even zoom any farther here. So I'm going to hit Z, enter, and E, enter. E is an echo. And this is going to, E is extents, which means it's going to zoom out to show me everything that I've drawn so far. And so here is my rectangle that's 75 feet by 100 feet. And we can see way, way, way in my bottom left-hand corner here, I can barely see my other little rectangle that I drew.
How did you expand it in 75 feet?
How did I draw it at 75 feet?
Yeah, 75.
I put 75, but you got to make sure you put the feet symbol, which is apostrophe. And that'll only work if you've set your units. All right, so now I want to dimension this to see, is it truly 75 feet? So I'm just going to hit my dimension here, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. What can't you do? Did you set your units? So go units one more time, and your unit should look like this. So you have architectural here and precision here. Does yours look just like that? All right. And then you're hitting REC for rectangle. You're clicking 1 point, and then you're typing in 75 feet by and tabbing over 100 feet. Are you with me so far? And then to zoom out, you hit Z, enter, and E, enter. And there actually is a slick shortcut for this. If you're zoomed in, if you just double click on your mouse wheel, takes a little practice, it'll also zoom you out all the way. Daniel, can you go around and help anyone that needs help? So your little mouse wheel, if you just double click down on it, so it's actually a button. Okay. Double click on your mouse wheel, so the little center wheel in your mouse. If you click twice on it without moving it up or down, that'll zoom you out. So I have my rectangle here, and I've dimensioned it, but my dimension, all I see is a line. That's kind of weird. So I zoom in really close, and I see, oh, look, 75 feet. What does it say? When you punched in 75, you probably didn't put the apostrophe. So you got to put apostrophe for feet. So if yours doesn't say 75, here's why. So if I hit REC for rectangle, I draw my rectangle, and I put 75, and I don't put an apostrophe, which is one apostrophe means feet, and then two apostrophes, or what the quote button on your keyboard, would be inches. So if you don't specify feet, then the default is inches. So if I go 75 by 100, it's actually going to go 75 inches. And if I dimension that, I see I get 5 feet, or yeah, here we go, 6 feet, 3 inches. Because 75 inches equals 6 feet, 3 inches. So you got to specify feet. I think this was week 6 quiz. All right, so is everyone with me so far? We have a rectangle, and we have the top line dimensioned, and the problem with it is the dimension is so small, we can't read it.
Mine doesn't want to go rectangle. I don't know. I think I go out of time.
You break it, you buy it. That's the rule here.
Didn't you say it cost like
It's $4,000. You can make that check out to me, though.
that's what I paid for the rent.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a rectangle.
What happens when you try?
Like I pressed 75 inches by 100
So you want to do 75 feet, yeah?
feet, but like it doesn't do the rectangle.
Sometimes what you need to do, if you watch my screen here, I'm going to go REC. And you got to click your bottom point first. And then sometimes you actually have to move your mouse a little bit so you have the 2 fields that you can tab to. So right now I'm at 11 feet by 8 feet. And here I'm going to go 75 and then make sure you do your apostrophe and then 100 and apostrophe to designate feet. So I don't know if you can see my screen there. You're at kind of an angle there, but it should look just like that. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I do the measurement, it doesn't say 75.
What does it say?
It doesn't say anything.
Would you mind getting that, Daniel? Okay, so is everyone with me so far? Lost. All right. All right, so why don't you just dimension whatever you've got, and we'll do this next step together. So our issue here is that our 75 feet, do they need me? Anything important on the phone? Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so our next step is our dimension. We can't read it because it's way too small. So we need to change our dim style settings. So no matter where you are, even if you're totally lost, I want you just to pick up where we are right now. Okay, I'm going to hit D for dim style. Under class style here, I'm going to click modify. And then there's 2 ways of doing this. There's the easy way and the hard way. The hard way would be for us to go through and, for example, our arrow size right now is at 1/4 of an inch. Well, when we're looking at a shape that's 100 feet, 1/4 of an inch is obviously way too small. So we could go through here and make this 5 feet. We'd go to our lines here, adjust all of this stuff, go to our text, adjust our text size. So that would be pretty time consuming to change all of those settings, but we do have the capability of changing all of those. An easier way to do this is we're just going to scale everything. So we're going to go to the fit, and we're going to adjust the overall scale here. I'm going to change this to 400. And this is important. Students often get this box here confused with primary units. There's this scale factor. We're going to leave this at 1. So make sure you're not changing this in primary units. You want to be in your fit tab, and we want to use our overall scale of, in this case, I'm putting 400. And for different assignments, there'll be a little trial and error here. Sometimes you'll use more or less. But for now, we're just going to set this to 400. And I'm going to click OK and close this. And hey, look at that. Now I actually have a dimension that I can see. Yep. That's okay. That's okay for now. I want to keep moving forward here. We'll address individual concerns in a moment. Okay, so no matter what you're doing, stop, follow along with this lecture. We're going to go our next step. Okay, next step is to adjust our grid. Okay, so I know my object here is 75 feet by 100 feet, and I want my grid to also be about that size. So how do we adjust the size of our grid? We just talked about it at the beginning of this lecture. It's the first command we learned. Limits, excellent. So I'm going to go, remember our first point is always 0, 0. So I'll just hit enter there. Our next point, I'm going to go like, I'm going to go 100 feet. So it's a little bit larger than 75. And then I'll go by 120 feet tall. Oops. So I'll do that one more time here. I'm doing limits. Our lower left corner is always 0, 0. So we're just going to hit enter to accept the default values there. And then our upper right corner, I'm going to do 100 feet by 120 feet. If you can't put your feet sign, then you haven't adjusted your units. You just type units, set it to architecture.
100 by what?
I did 100 by 120. So I have my grid. It's set to 120, 120, but I don't see it. So what's up with that? So I'm going to try and turn my grid on. It says grid on. That's strange. I just don't see it. But when I zoom in, let's see, I'm going to zoom in really close on something. All right. So we don't see our grid at all. So something's weird. So what we need to do is we need to adjust our grid settings. And the problem is that our grid lines originally were set to probably 1/4 of an inch. Well, at 75 feet times 1/4 of an inch would be hundreds and hundreds of lines. What's that? 300 lines, and our screen resolution just can't show that many lines. So basically, our grid is too dense to actually display. So we need to change our grid settings. And here's how we do that. I'm going to right-click. So I'm going to right-click on our grid here, and I'm going to go to Snap Settings. And now I can see why our grid isn't showing up. Everything here is set to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to have a grid line every 5 feet. And I'm going to change this to 5 feet as well. And I'll show you this again in a moment. And hey, look at that.
I can't find something. Okay.
So now I see my grid again, and the difference is now each box, instead of being 1/4 of an inch, each box is 5 feet. And then every 25 feet, I have what they call a major line, which is just a line that's a little bit darker. And if I go up all the way across here, I can see it's 75 feet all the way across. So here's how I did that. I went down to our toolbar. So this is the button where we normally toggle our grid on and off. And then just to the right of that, there's the snap mode. Normally what we turn our mode on and off at. And we're going to go to Snap Settings. So So here at the snap settings, I set this to 5 feet, and this is our snap setting here. And then I made sure that I changed my grid spacing to the same setting here. And the difference between these two is just how your mouse snaps as it goes around from grid to grid. So if I were to...
You said feet or inches?
Feet. Yeah, inches would be way too small. So now if I were to turn on my grid snap and draw a line, you can see how it's jumping around from 5-foot increments to 5-foot increments. All right. Now, there's one more thing we need to learn how to scale. We all remember our center layer. So let's go into our center layer up here. So our layer selection, click on center. And I'm just going to draw a line that's going to go straight down the center of our document. So I'm snapping from the midpoint to turn off this snap here. And I'm looking for my triangle right there. So I've drawn a line in my center layer down the center of my object, but it doesn't look like a center line, right? Our center line is normally dashed. And the reason it's solid is if I zoom in super close, there's my center line. So it actually is dashed. The problem is, as I zoom out, it gets so small that you can't even tell. So what makes our center line dashed is the line type. So the line type for that is center. And what we need to do is we need to adjust the scale of our line type. And so the command for that is line type scale, or the shortcut for that is LTS. So if you are lost so far, I want you to stop whatever it is you're working on and instead work on this. So you've just drawn a line in your center layer. Quick and easy, everyone knows how to do that. Okay. So again, we need to adjust our line type scale. Shortcut for that is LTS, line type scale. Right now, we can see that it's set to 1. Typically, whatever we set our dim style scale to is the same thing we'll set our line type scale to. So I think that was 400. So I'm going to punch in 400 here, hit enter, and voila, we've got a perfect center line. I did 400. 400. Okay. So if you have a smaller rectangle or something, it might look a little bit different. But if your rectangle is 75 feet, your center line should look just like mine. We just drew our center line. We drew a line in our center layer. Okay, we've got 2 more commands to learn today, and then I want to give you guys time to really get started here, so stay focused. Next thing I'm going to do, this just for fun, I'm going to round my edge here. So for a little review, how do we round our edges? Fill it. Excellent. And if it's 75 feet all the way across, and I just want to round this halfway, what would I want to set my radius to? 24.5. There you go.
No, never mind.
Oh, come on, people. 37.5. Excellent. Let's try this again here. Fill it. Radius. So 37. And just for a reminder here, I'm going to do feet. And then a half is 6 inches. So 37 feet, 6 inches is our radius. And now I'm just going to round this edge right here. Yep. So remember, you go 37, and we got to do apostrophe for feet, and then 6, and then quotes for inches. Now I have a nice rounded edge here. I'm going to delete this 75. Just for now. It was 37 feet, 6 inches. All right, so what I want to do is I want to take this shape, and I want to rotate it. So I have another one up here, but have it be rotated. So to rotate, we do a command called rotate. And the shortcut for that is just RO. And then just like our scale commands and move commands, the first thing that our rotate command is asking us to do is specify a base point. So this is going to be our pivot point that the object is going to rotate around. So I'm going to choose this corner right here, our upper left corner. And when I click it, you can see as I move my mouse, it's already starting to move around. But there's one thing I want to do before I rotate this, and that's because I want to keep my original shape here. So what I want to do is I want to specify C for copy. So what copy is going to do is make a copy of this shape and rotate it. So it's going to keep our source object. And now it's going to ask us how many degrees do we want to rotate this. So halfway around our circle is 180. So I'm going to punch in 180 and hit enter. Then I'm going to do this one more time. This time I'll select the whole object. RO for rotate. Specify my center point. Hit C for copy. And this time I'm just going to go 90 degrees. Just to kind of give sort of a little rose petal looking thing. So that's the rotate command. If it's confusing, that's just a command that once you practice, it'll make more sense. Yeah.
What's the angle on the curved edge?
We did half of 75, so
75?
that was 37 and a half feet. Yep. But again, you can put any radius you want. All right, one more command to learn, and then you guys are done with our lecture for today. I'm going to start by creating a point. So I'll go PO, put a point right here. And I'm going to get out of my center layer. And let's draw a circle. And this circle is going to be have a radius of 30 feet. You don't have to dimension this, but just so you know, I'll throw in a dimension here. So I've got a radius of 30 feet. Now before, when I gave you assignments and say I had another circle, and the circle was inside here, and the circle was maybe 6 inches smaller, you'd have to do the math in your head of, okay, 30 minus 6 inches. But there's actually an easier way. And that way is a command called offset. So it's just OFFSET. Offset. So you hit offset, hit enter. And looking at our command line here, it's asking us to specify offset distance. So I'm going to say, why don't we say 2 feet? So I'm going to go 2 feet, hit enter. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to go inside, or basically what side of my source object do I want to offset? So I can make my bigger or smaller than my source object. So I'm going to go smaller. And what's cool about this command is it stays in the offset mode. I can select object again and make that smaller. So I'm just clicking on my object, selecting what side I want it to offset, which I'm going towards the center of my circle. And it just keeps making circles smaller and smaller and smaller for me. I can also go larger. So I'm going to hit my outer circle here and just going larger, larger, and larger, each time expanding by 2 feet. Hit enter when I'm done, and now I can do a radius here on my outer circle here and my inner circle 16. So you can see it went offset by 2 feet each time. So really quick and easy method of creating objects. Also works for the line tool. I'm just going to draw a random line here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to offset. And this time I'm going to offset by 1.5 feet. So all I have to do is click on my line, and I click on what side. Let's try this again. Offset 1.5 feet. And I can just click on the side that I want to offset. And again, I can just keep clicking on my line, offsetting it. So anyway, you pick any dimension you want, but you get the idea. Quick and easy way of creating parallel lines. So if you're drawing, say, a street, you could just draw the center line of your street and then click on offset, and it will draw, the sides of your street. Also works for any other polygonal object. So say I've create any kind of polygon, offset. I'll go 3 feet. Quick and easy way of offsetting that. Thank you. Now, say you have a polyline. I'm just going to draw a random shape here. I'm going to hit C for close. Now, as long as this is I've drawn it with the polyline tool, when I click on it, it's going to select the entire object. That's my clue that I can offset this as well. So I'll do offset. I'll keep that current offset, and you can see I can quickly offset this object. Or, say I have a rectangle. You'll need to know this for today's assignment. Say we fillet this. I'm going to make my radius 20 feet. Find my keyboard here. And I'll do the same with this side here. And say I also do how do we make straight edges? Remember that command. Chamfer, excellent. And I'll do a distance here. And we'll just make this maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. And if I can chamfer, there we go. So here I have an object that I've chamfered, and when I click on it, it selects the entire object, so I know that I have created this object correctly as a polygon, or poly shape, I guess would be a good word for it. Therefore, I can offset. And I'll stick with my 3 feet here. And I can quickly and easily offset all of this. So obviously, to create a shape this complex and manually offset it would be extremely difficult. So this command is really the only way you can do that one successfully. Okay, any questions at all on either our adjusting our scale, our grid size, anything on the rotate command or the offset command? Excellent.